Welcome to our Renowned Gamer series. I am joined by Simon from the European Space Agency. Hi, how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah. I wasn't expecting to be talking to you guys this morning, but it's shall we go?
Here we are, always showing up. Well, thank you for taking the time to speak to us, because I can imagine you've got a huge amount of much more important things to do than have me ramble on at you. But here we are, I've got you. So, we are obviously doing our Guildford Games Festival, and as a part of that, we just want to hear from gamers outside of games. So let's start with, first of all, who you are and what you do. In as much or as little detail as you want to give us.
Okay, I'll give it a go. Okay, yeah, so my name's Simon. I'm a spacecraft operations engineer. I work at the European Space Operations Centre in Darmstadt in Germany as an on-site contractor. I'm on the Mars Express flight operations team. So my day job is operating one of the two spacecraft that ESA has orbiting Mars. And so our job is basically the science teams wanted to do science, and we have to make sure that the commands get on board, that the spacecraft is working properly, and that the data comes back down, and that it goes to the right people. And when problems arise, we have to try to fix them. And yeah, that's kind of that's what we do when we get up in the morning.
Man, and I get freaked out sending a tweet from a company account. I mean, my goodness, that's quite a jump.
Yeah, it's when it can take sometimes up to 25 minutes or so for the commands to get to the spacecraft, and then another 25 minutes to come back. Then you can be the waiting can be a little bit.
So I assume
you get through lots of tea.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I mean, the waiting surely is perfect for playing small and quick games. Just need a Switch in your back pocket. Done.
Yeah, we should get them. Yeah, we should get that set up in the control room. Yeah, it does. So, I mean, it's weird because at the end of the day, we're interfacing with the spacecraft through computers, and so you just have numbers on screens and things like that. When we say we can see what the spacecraft is doing, I mean, what we see is voltages change and currents change, and the positions of switches that move around. So it can sometimes feel a little bit like you're playing a video game.
And I suppose with that level of detail, having some kind of raucous Mario Kart tournament in the corner probably isn't gonna help situations.
No, probably not.
Scrap what I said. No. Make sure you take the Switch outside before you play it. So let's talk about your gaming career, I guess. What would you say is your earliest gaming memory or favourite childhood game?
Ooh. I mean, I think probably the earliest. I mean, this is going back a bit. I remember, for some reason, my dad managed to borrow a BBC Micro.
Amazing.
And I remember there was a game. I don't know how that was called, but you could. There was a tractor in the corner of the screen, and basically you had to open gates, and it would move the tractor around, and you had to get to the end of the field. I remember being sort of mind blown that you could do something like that. Yeah, I mean, we played quite a few of the sort of early consoles, but mostly around sort of friends and families' houses. I mean, the first computer we had is actually sat behind me. It's a Commodore Amiga 500.
Amazing.
So that was really where I really started sort of playing games. So that would be stuff like Monkey Island, Lemmings. I remember Jeff Crammond's Grand Prix series started on that one, and just that absolutely blew my mind, the fact that you could actually race a Formula 1 car on a computer. And then sort of as the sort of 90s sort of rolled on, we eventually got a PC, and then sort of moved over more to PC games and things like that.
And do you think that's where your kind of interest and passion for programming was sparked? Do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that this was a time when a lot of people's first connection with a computer, the first time you came across them, was usually through playing games. And I think especially back in the late 80s, because you had machines like the Amiga, like the Atari, where you didn't need to install Windows. It was a machine, you bought it, you could play games on it, but also it could do other things. the very first bit of programming I ever did was on the Amiga, because I remember borrowing a book from the local library. I think it was like one of these Usborne books on computers, which had programming. I think actually the British National Computer Society, I think, actually released them all on their website for free download not so long ago. But I remember getting this book that basically taught you how to program in BASIC, and there was a version of BASIC that was available on the Amiga, and that going from that concept of I can play the games to actually I can make the computer do things was certainly where that sparked. Because by the time I got to do my my A levels, that was still at a point where computers were being taught and computing was being taught in schools, but not, programming had kind of sort of taken a bit of a back seat at that point, I think. And so I think when I arrived at my A levels, I was one of the few people who actually knew how to program at least in BASIC, which turned out to be very useful, and I've ended up making a career out of it.
Yeah,
my first my first sort of job out of university was I was working down in Bristol for the company I still work for. In fact, that they produce software for space, and this idea of with my background at university being space and computing, that was a perfect synergy, and I've kind of carried on ever since.
Amazing. Would you say there are times when games inspire your work, or is that too kind of basic a way to put it?
Well, I think fundamentally, as I said before, it was the act of playing games and that exposure to computers that inspired me to find out more about them, and this idea that you could create your own stuff, and that motivated you to learn to program. Yeah, and then from there, it's really sort of snowballed, and so.
Fantastic. How important are games to you as an escape? I mean, are you personally? I'm the kind of gamer that falls in and out. Sometimes I'm too busy with work and then I can't think about games, and other times all I can think about is games. It's a very bizarre kind of space that I'm in. Are you? Are games a kind of daily, weekly, monthly escape for you as far as day-to-day life?
I mean, my wife will probably tell you I'm messing about the computer pretty much constantly. But in the present situation we all find ourselves in, I think any kind of escape is important. And certainly, I got very into VR, and so the idea of I think that certainly then takes this sort of escapism up to another level. I mean. Wandering around planets in No Man's Sky, flying spaceships in Elite Dangerous, Skyrim in VR. I mean, it got to a point where I wasn't even bothered about doing any of the quests. I was just quite enjoying wandering about.
Going for a walk. I love that.
Yeah, it's nice. And but also in addition to that now, there's particularly over the last sort of 20 years or so, you've seen the shift to multiplayer games and things like that. And again, I think particularly in a situation like we're in at the moment, where you can bring a group of people together. You can fire up Steam voice chat, and there's a group of us at the moment who are quite addicted to Among Us on Steam. So we're kind of we've got a group that we play that quite a lot, and again it's just nice because you're yakking away over the voice chat and playing the game, and it's a nice way of connecting with people.
Yeah, I mean, definitely at the moment it's something that we all need, human contact, etc. But I really love those moments when we are allowed to have our friends around us. I had an experience recently. We were playing Mortal Kombat, and it started quite jovial, and everyone was having a nice time, and it's all laughing, and isn't he funny, and look at this funny move. Took about 20 minutes before complete silence, deadly serious. Like, no, this is really busy. I
remember sort of at university, we used to have there was always one or two games consoles in the flat, and there'd be the sort of after you've been out to student union, there would be the sort of the 3-hour game of round robin game of Pro Evolution Soccer or
that you're not even always expecting, and sometimes not always even up for, and yet 3 hours in you can't. The controller is in your hand. I distinctly remember a World Cup that took hours, but
by the end of it, everybody was so invested in it that you had to stay and watch the final.
The beginning of lockdown very much heralded the beginning of the 48 race Mario Kart tournaments. Just, if we got the time, why not? Let's do 40 of these. Fantastic. I mean, the obvious parallel between what, you know, the video game side of things and what you do is the, you know, the engineering programming link. Would you say there are any other parallels between what you do and
well, I mean,
dev?
I think certainly when you look at the big kind of AAA stuff that's coming out. I mean, these are not things that come together in 5 minutes. You know, this is a long development process involving lots of people, you know, all working together to sort of produce something that is going to sort of come out and hopefully entertain people. And you know, space missions. Again, I think space missions are similar in that regard, that they're not something that's going to, you know, you don't think of something on the Tuesday and have it on the pad the following week. I mean, you know, Mars Express, for example, the mission I work on, is one of the fastest developments that ESA ever did, and that was rubber stamped in 1998, and it was on the pad in 2003, and that's considered very quick. You know, the development time for these things is long, so I think I think that's certainly something similar. But I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, we are using, you know, I think from the software side of things, you know, but we are using computers to talk to another computer at the end of the day in operations. And the fact that that computer happens to be orbiting another planet, well, okay, but at the end of the day, you're still, you know, you're using software. You know, that all of that's got to be developed and written and tested in the same way that the games would be.
I can't even imagine dev time longer than what we go through with video games. It sounds intense.
I mean, I guess the advantage of video games is you don't have to put it on a shake table or bake it to temperatures similar to the center of the sun to make sure it still works.
Very true. We just need to imagine how hot the sun is, and that's enough. That's as far as we need to go. There's a lot of similarities, I assume, between kind of what you do and the game side of things, as far as inspiring young people to take this up as a potential career.
I think that I mean, that's one of the reasons why, you know, I'm happy to talk to you guys today. I mean, it's you know, we do a lot of sort of outreach activities, and you know, we try to sort of communicate what we're doing, and you know, we're excited about it. And you know, when you hear some of the lead designers talk about their games, I mean, you can see how excited they are, and you know, they want people to get involved. And I think that's probably true. Yeah.
I mean, the upsetting thing for me is that you're doing things far more incredible and miraculous than we are, and yet we get the fanfare.
I think the things from our side is that you guys get to work with some slightly higher tech than we do. So
really? Wow.
Well, to put it into perspective, the flight computer. I mean, we have different roles on the Mars Express team. My main area of expertise is the flight computer and the onboard software. And the flight computer on Mars Express is the processor's it's a 1750A running at 8 megahertz with 2 megabytes of RAM. So it is essentially an Amiga 500 to all intents and purposes. And that's running all of the flight software. It's running the attitude control system. The entire piece of software that we had to make some modifications to it 2 years ago to help extend the mission. The entire piece of software that actually controls how the spacecraft moves about and where it's pointing sits in about 400 kilobytes of RAM memory.
My goodness.
If there's a problem, we can't go up there and fix it.
Yeah.
So you have to use components that you know are going to work, and the lead time to get these qualified for use in space is long. And so, you know, you're typically running about, you know, 10 years behind the latest state of the art when you're designing and building these things.
Is it a bit like how your parents kept Nokia brick phones for much, much longer than they needed to because they were reliable?
It's pretty much.
Amazing.
It's. I mean, the nice thing is actually sort of remembering computers from the early 80s and having a fair few of them, and you actually come to work on spacecraft is actually quite useful.
That's fantastic. I love that. I absolutely love that. So if we're talking about, I mean, it's really hard because there is so much to talk about when it comes to what you do. But if you were to give a few lines that could inspire someone to do what you do, would there be anything off the top of your head? I mean, going to space is surely, I mean, essentially is exciting enough. But
I mean, I think the one thing that I will that I often say is that there's a lot to be said for when you get up in the morning actually wanting to go to work. And the current role I have is hands down the best job I've ever had, and it's just every single day there is something new. You'd think with a mission that's been flying for 17 years, but we're 17 years into a 2-year mission, because we've managed to keep fixing things and improving stuff, and there's always something that you don't expect each week, and it constantly keeps you on your toes. You get to work with a brilliant team of people. Yeah, it's so much fun. Work shouldn't. It can be stressful as hell when things aren't working. But 2 years ago we had this period where our ring laser gyros that actually keep the spacecraft stable were failing, and we hit on this idea of, well, we could take the bit of software from another mission that allows us to fly without them and try and transplant it in and rewrite the software, which we've never done before. I had to frantically learn Ada in about 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh my goodness!
And we gave it a go. And so working with our brilliant guys in Flight Dynamics, and partners in industry, and we had this year period where it was just absolutely full on trying to do this. And you look back at it, it was stressful at the time, and then when you look back at it, it was that level of creativity that you have in just solving a problem. At the end of the day, engineering is about problem solving, and that in itself is a very creative process. I mean, as is the creative process that goes into making games, and that freedom to create is just very fun.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said for the in the trenches, kind of feeling as well. Once you've gone through something that is a year's worth of stress and learning and hardcore, knowledge seeking and working out what works and what doesn't. By the end of that, you're so much closer.
I imagine. I mean, when the teams, sort of when their game finally hits the shops and they've, all of that work is done, and they can just sort of sit back and just enjoy what they've created. The same. I guess it was probably on the Friday morning after we'd actually gone through all of the tests and saw that the new mechanism that we put in place worked, and that we had saved the mission. It was just sort of the grins everybody was wandering around with. It was fantastic.
And you're absolutely right. There really is. There is no dread like the waking thought of, oh no, I don't like my job and I've got to go and do it for another 8-9 hours. It really is the most soul-destroying situations a young person at least can be in, I think, because it really does. When you've got your whole life stretched out ahead of you and it feels so much longer than it does by the time you kind of get to 30s, 40s, to think, oh no, I hate what I do and I have no kind of direction, is terrifying. To kind of instill, especially the opportunity to go into technology is so important for our young people. I mean,
I think also as well as it's, when I sort of ended up, I kind of fell into spacecraft operations a little bit more, and I think what we're trying to do, certainly when I'm talking to people about it, and certainly a lot of my colleagues do, is just to sort of make sure that people are aware that you can do this. This is actually this is a job that some random, I'm just some random guy from Stoke-on-Trent, and I'm flying missions around Mars. It's you can do this. It's these opportunities are available. You can be a top video game designer. It's
it's real. It's viable.
The options are there.
And I guess it's a bit like video game development in that there must be so many different disciplines, for want of a better term, within what you do, as there are within games, and actually breaking those out and giving someone the opportunity to see and understand what they are.
Absolutely. I mean, as I say, in terms of the frontline operations, we have the controllers and the spacecraft controllers and ourselves on the flight control team. But we've got the maths gurus in Flight Dynamics. We've got all of the support teams. We've got the product assurance teams, the network, the people who look after the ground stations, who's looking telecoms, the people who look after the computer infrastructure, the people who are coming up with the new software concepts that we need, the finance department. There's a PR department. There's space lawyers are a thing.
Space lawyers. I'd watch that show.
There's there really is. It's not. I think people sometimes think, oh well, I can't solve equations on a whiteboard, but that's not. That's one part of what operating a spacecraft throughout the solar system is involves.
Well, kudos for going out of your way to try and inspire people to step into a new career path. It's really, really exciting. What would you say if you could give us one super memorable gaming experience, whether it was upsetting or uplifting or whichever, with people on your own, online? I don't mind.
I'm trying to think of what was. I guess it's probably the first time I tried VR. And this was a few years ago. There was the Oculus Rift grew out of a forum that was looking at the VR tech, and on this forum, when they first released the very, very first dev kit, it was just the glasses. It didn't have any head tracking or anything, but there was a recipe. Effectively, they posted all the parts that you needed to make one, and it was basically buy the cheapest ski goggle you can, buy this LCD panel off eBay, these map reading lenses from this website, and a lot of gaffer tape, and you can build this thing. And I'd got this in addition, but it didn't have head tracking, and there was some software that did side-by-side 3D. But I had this system Track IR, which is used a lot in for flight sims. It's like a little sort of infrared camera, and it's these 4 sensors. You're supposed to clip them to a baseball cap, and then the idea is you can look about, and it moves the screen. And so I thought, well, by gaffer taping that to the top of this thing, you could then have sort of head tracking. And I remember playing I think it was like a World War I biplane a game with this thing on, and the resolution was terrible. But I remember just sort of flying in quite low and then pitching the craft over, and like my stomach just went up here, and then that was the point at which I was like, actually, this works. This actually works. And I was thinking, well, when they actually refine this, I mean, this is going to be amazing. And so that's one that sticks in my mind.
That's a great one. And it's the thing with VR is sometimes it's almost easy to forget that we have it sometimes, because so many people overlook it, don't seem all that interested, have tried it and it doesn't work for them, etc., etc. But when you get it right. When you put that headset on and it's perfect, and I'm sure I've mentioned it before in these interviews, but I'm going to mention it forever because everyone should play it. Thumper in VR is the most perfect thing you can do with your time. Who knew rhythm violence game?
A colleague of mine on the Next Flight Control team is a particularly big fan of Thumper. Yeah,
it's my jam. But I remember one Christmas, and it can't even have been that long ago. So we're not talking when I was a kid. What, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? My entire family, I made them watch Thumper in VR for about 3 hours. I couldn't step away from it. And every time I did, I was like, no, just one more. Come on, I can do it. I can get past this level. Just became my entire Christmas. Maybe that's why I love it so much. Maybe it makes me think of Christmas. Okay, so you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and you're a game developer. And I know this might be an easy one for you because of what you do. You're not allowed to be an engineer. What are you going to do in games? What's your new job, Simon?
I don't know. I guess the artwork would certainly not be my thing. I mess about a little bit sometimes with playing around with Unity, and I'm having to sort of just find assets to jump in because I can't I can't model things. I have a friend who makes who's very good at 3D modeling and stuff. He does quite a few bits and pieces for the space agency. I don't know. The thing is, development probably is is the thing I kind of enjoy doing. So it's.
Well, that's okay.
On the one hand, I'd like to think that I could help sort of guide what the game is going to be about, but I think it's probably a little bit like everybody. Everybody secretly wants to open their own pub and thinks they'd be brilliant at it. So it's I think if you actually, what you think would maybe make the perfect game probably isn't necessarily what everybody else does. So, I think probably more on the development side of things. Although, I mean, I've listened to people like John Carmack talk about like render pipelines and stuff, and then you just sit there going, "That is a lot of stuff I know nothing about." Clearly, I mean, it's just the level of detail that those people can go into and this stuff is really quite amazing.
I feel like we need to set up some pretty intense knowledge sharing between yourself and any developers who would happily come and listen, of which I imagine there would be quite a lot. Well, let's get to the hard question then, to the important stuff. Favourite Guildford game, past or present, or studio?
Ooh. Well, I mean, sort of, I guess, in terms of probably I'm playing at the moment a lot, I guess probably No Man's Sky, especially since they've added the VR support. I think that's been done really well. I think over the years, probably, I think Populous, I never really understood how to play it. And I think Theme Park passed me by, but I remember playing Theme Hospital a lot. And really quite, I think it's just because I like those sort of sandbox games where there's not a specific, you're kind of free to do pretty much what you want, and it's really just how you go about solving whatever it is thrown in front of you. And I think the humour that was in it as well, was it the bloaty head syndrome or whatever it was, that you had the machine that sort of deflated people's heads, and when you got rats, you got the mouse pointer turned into a little like target, and you had to take the rats out. I remember playing that quite a lot. And actually, I mean, I think it became available on EA Origin as well, though, not so long ago. I fired it up when I heard I was going to be doing this. I had a quick on it, and it stands up. It's a good game.
Have you played 2 Point?
Sorry?
Have you played 2 Point Hospital?
No. People keep telling me. I think it's because I have the original. I have the original one, so I kind of tend to.
Honestly, you should. I'm a little bit biased because I love that team and I worked with them for a little while. But it is the spiritual successor, and it is. I mean, immediately you're in. Like it feels the same. It's got all of those ridiculous dad jokes that you're going to repeat, even though the first time you heard them you cringed a little bit, and suddenly they become part of your lexicon. Like it really is just the most wonderful time eater.
I mean, a colleague of mine has definitely got it, because I remember he's essentially said exactly the same thing. So it's I will have to check that out.
It's quite wonderful. But Theme's an excellent choice. I mean, that was my childhood hospital and theme park, and even like I loved the panic. When everything just started going really badly wrong, and you knew you'd lost it, and you could just zoom out and watch it all burn. It's like, oh well, this is what's happened. And on that note, Simon, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us about video games. And I should probably leave you to get on with your very, very busy and probably far more important day than I have planned.
I hope I've been able to answer your questions, and I hope that people have got a little bit inspired by to find out a bit more what we do as well.
Well, I'm going to call you back in to talk more, frankly. So this is just the taster. This is the teaser. Fantastic, Simon. Thank you so much.